You said choose past practices over platitudes. Can you break down for us what you meant by that?
Yeah, when we're talking about candidates, when you're talking about somebody that has a desire to get into office, whether it's on a council or state, whatever that level is, see, I always they're going to tell you what you want to hear, and that's what I mean by when you're dealing with these platitudes. They're going to tell you what you want to hear at that time to garner your support or your vote. But you have to be able to say, well, how do you live you say you're pro-abortion or you're anti-abortion or you're pro-rights for this or you're gun, whatever I'm Second Amendment, but yet you voted for legislation that tried to limit gun control, to create gun control. So we have to understand what is your heart, where do you line up, and I think there are some questions that we can ask, when you're talking about, looking at somebody's past history. If they're a new candidate, if they're just on the ballot for the first time, or they say, hey, I think I'm going to run for school board or I'm going to run for this, and you don't really have a lot of history with them, okay, there's let me hear, what do you believe is the role of government in our society? And you start to ask them, where do you put government? Is government above family? Is government above church? Is government going to be the corrector and the fixer and the controlling aspect of all these other things to make them better? Or is government going to support the family? To be the true nexus of this nation is built upon the families and small business. That's what makes us great. And so I ask people, where, when it comes to politicians and candidates, where does government feel? They should be a supporting aspect. And that's why when you look at the Constitution, that's what it was crafted to do, is to help families, help business. It wasn't to control and to mitigate and to kind of to be a lord over them. Another question is, I say, well, where do you value life? Where does life come in? How much do you value life? And you start to ask them, where does life, begin and end? Because see, we have this abortion issue of when does conception, but now we're already starting to get into, well, when does life end? When can we pull the plug? And when can, I grew up in the 80s. Logan's Run was one of these movies where they got to do anything they wanted, but when they hit age 30, they were euthanized. It was, so again, so there's two sides to life, and how do we pursue that life? And I think that, that's kind of a couple questions I always like to vet or talk with candidates, those that have a desire to be in public office. Those are two critical ones, in my opinion.